I swear.
Detective Bulkley, will you state your full name for the court's record? You've been through this before.
Detective Stephen Bowman, badge number 251, Police Department.
And how long have you worked with the Chattanooga Police Department?
13 years.
What is your current role at the police department?
I'm a homicide investigator, Violent Crimes Bureau.
And what did you do before that?
Prior to that, I was a field training officer for 4 years, and a patrol officer prior to that, for approximately 8 years total.
So when did you begin your career in the homicide division?
In April of 2020.
Okay, so going on 5 years. At some point, did you become involved in the investigation into Jason Chen?
That's correct.
And can you explain to the jury what that involvement was initially?
Sure. So my understanding is that the homicide division was notified of the case possibly on November 27th of 22. I responded the morning of the 28th to assist Detective Crawford, who was assigned to work the case. At the time, it was established to be a missing persons case with suspicious circumstances, and so we were working it as a potential homicide. As a teammate, we routinely respond to assist each other with investigations, and so I responded for that reason.
Would you say this investigation was an all-hands-on-deck approach?
Yes, I would say so.
Were you involved in the drafting of any search warrants in this case?
I was.
And what was that?
The first search warrant that I wrote was a T-Mobile phone records search warrant for the defendant's phone records, Jason Chen.
Did you issue that search warrant to T-Mobile for Mr. Chen's phone records?
Yes, ma'am. I obtained that on the 28th, and I submitted it to T-Mobile on the 28th of November of 22.
You got it the same day?
I obtained it. I swore it out in front of the magistrate, and I submitted it to T-Mobile on the same day, the 28th of November of 22.
And were they able to return Mr. Chen's records to you?
So I did not obtain the records until the morning of the morning of December 1st of 2022.
But you did, in fact, obtain Mr. Chen's phone records?
I did, yes.
I'm going to hand you 2 documents and a jump drive. You can inspect those documents. Do you recognize those documents?
I do.
What are they?
So this first document here, which says T-Mobile timing advance request form, I submitted this to T-Mobile the day after I submitted the initial search warrant, submitted on November 29th of 22. It is a T-Mobile requires a payment for receipt of certain records, in this case timing advance records. The reason for that is because they consider it burdensome, and it requires a fair amount of work on the part of T-Mobile employees to produce that data. So they require payment for those particular records. So that in order to ensure that they are paid for their work, they require a law enforcement officer or agency to submit this form with a target who will pay, essentially.
Okay, and you filled that out.
I did.
Does it have Mr. Chen's phone number on it?
Yes, it does.
And can you read that phone number to the jury?
The phone number is 615-839-6880.
Okay, and then the next page, do you recognize that?
Yes, ma'am.
What is that?
Upon receiving the electronic records that I requested on December 1st, this came with the records. It's essentially an affidavit provided by the T-Mobile employee tasked with providing those records, and it is attesting, this employee is attesting under oath that the records that have been delivered are, to their knowledge, what I requested and what was ordered in that search warrant.
And is Mr. Chen's cell phone number also on that affidavit?
That's correct.
Okay. Your Honor, I've asked these two documents be the state's next to exhibits.
34 numbers.
All right, and this jump drive, have you seen that before?
Yes, ma'am.
Are those the T-Mobile records that you received from T-Mobile related to Jason Chen's cell phone?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you initial that jump drive to show that it is those T-Mobile records on it?
I did.
Your Honor, I ask that this be admitted as the state's next exhibit. Okay. Based on phone records like this, is law enforcement able to go back and look at a subject's location data?
Oftentimes, yes.
And in this case, were these phone records used to determine Jason Chen's location on or around the week of November 22nd, 23rd, 2022?
They were.
And were you in communication with Investigator Crawford during this time period?
I was.
Were you keeping him up to date on what you were doing?
Absolutely.
Did you let him know that you got the T-Mobile records back from T-Mobile?
Within about 30 seconds.
And at that point in time, did you or he begin to look for the location data?
I immediately transmitted those records to Detective Crawford, and I may have, Detective Crawford for sure, so that he could begin plugging those into the records processing program that we use.
Okay. And at this point, to be clear, had Jasmine Pace been found?
No.
Okay. And based on those records, did Investigator Crawford instruct you or others to head towards a certain location?
We began to formulate a plan, yes, at that point, based on what he saw in those records.
Based on what he saw in those phone records, at some point, and I'll let you explain this to the jury, did you end up on Suck Creek Road?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain that process to the jury, that day, and who you were with?
Yes, ma'am. So when Detective Crawford and I believe Detective Jason Gunn also may have been working on this, when we plugged the phone records into CellHawk, which is the program that we commonly use for plotting location data and et cetera, there was a fair amount of location data on the 22nd to the 23rd that was of particular interest. I recall that the timing advance records, which are more precise, showed that Jason Chen's device traveled along Suck Creek Road on, I believe, on the 23rd during the afternoon, perhaps in the evening. I believe there were maybe two that showed up at two different times during that day along Suck Creek Road, in between, I think it's Signal Mountain Boulevard and Prentice Cooper on that stretch there, which parallels the river. We found that to be of interest, and we thought that would be a good place to search for Jasmine Pace.
For Because his phone records showed that he had possibly been in that area.
That's correct.
Mr. Chen.
That's correct.
Are you familiar with Sutt Creek Road?
Not very familiar, but I'm familiar having been out there a couple of times, including on the date that we responded and found the space.
Who all went towards the direction of Sutt Creek Road on this day?
So there were fugitive investigators that were assisting. I know Detective Seach, Detectives Jason Gunn, Joel Gunn, Detective Cottrell, Detective King. I don't recall all the others, but I was with Detective King, Detective Cottrell, Jason Gunn, and Joel Gunn when we began our search initially.
And explain to me what you did when you turned down Sutt Creek Road.
So after turning off of Signal Mountain Boulevard, I recall there's a large concrete plant. If you're traveling out Sutt Creek Road in the direction of Prentice Cooper, there's a large concrete plant on the right-hand side. After passing that, we stopped at the first gravel pull-off area, which is on the side of the road in between the roadway and the river. So we stopped at the very first likely or logical stopping point for a vehicle, and we thought we would start our search there and work our way down Sutt Creek Road.
And what'd you do then?
We got out of our cars. Again, the detectives, both Gunn brothers, Detective Cottrell, Detective King, and I got out of our cars. We parked in that gravel parking area of the pull-off, and I recall seeing a deer carcass on one section of that pull-off area, and I would say within 30 seconds, certainly within 1 minute of our stopping and getting out of our cars, Detective Cottrell and Detective Joel Gunn drew all of our attention to a suitcase that was hung up in the brush partway down the slope.
Can you describe for the jury the topography there between Sutt Creek Road and the riverbank where the suitcase was located?
So the pull-off is, sort of maybe sort of a crescent. It sort of, it's narrow and then widens a little bit, and then it narrows again as it, towards the road. It's less than, I would say it's certainly less than 50 feet wide. And where the gravel stops and the road drops off, the ground drops off towards the river, it's a sharp drop. I would, as I recall, 10, 15 feet above the river level, I would say, something like that. So we were standing on this, on the ground, probably about 10 or 15 feet above the river level, and that steep drop off, it's not 90 degrees, and it was covered in sort of low brush, weeds and things, maybe kudzu, I'm not sure. Is that?
Sure, yeah, thank you. And then when you get to the bottom of that slope, are you directly in the Tennessee River, or is there a beach area? What is that like down there?
Well, it looked like maybe the river was lower than it would be at other times of the year or at other times of the season. So there was some sort of, I guess you could call it a beach, some dirt and sandy, rocky area at the base where just before the river.
Okay, and when you all noticed the suitcase, what did you proceed to do?
Well, we talked about it first as, all the detectives who were there, we talked about what to do. I think all of us felt there was a very good chance that we had found Jasmine Pace. But the suitcase was closed and we didn't know what was inside. So rather than assuming and calling all the cavalry and finding that there was nothing of interest or value to the investigation inside, we decided to photograph the suitcase in place because I had disposable gloves in my pocket. I put those on, and I pulled the suitcase up. I was able to reach down and pull the suitcase up to the level area where we were standing. And Detective Jason Gunn documented that with video in case what we found in the suitcase was of evidentiary value. After that, I unzipped the suitcase to see what was inside. You want me to keep going?
Why don't you go ahead and keep going?
In my experience, both on patrol and investigations, I have often found discarded items, discarded suitcases, and things like that. I have seen animals disposed of in suitcases and things like that. And so I didn't want to assume anything. We didn't want to assume anything. So when I unzipped the suitcase and saw a black trash bag inside, I was not able to identify the contents of that trash bag. So because I had gloves on, I placed my hand on various parts of that trash bag and its contents, and I could feel what was consistent with a human head, shoulders, and a torso. At that point, we were even more certain that we found Jasmine Pace, but certainly that we had found a body.
So at that point, did you back off and call others?
At that point, we did not touch the suitcase or its contents anymore. We notified supervision, we notified our crime scene unit, and we notified the Hamilton County Medical Examiner. And we secured that scene until they arrived.
Did the Hamilton County Medical Examiner come to that scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you present when he was there?
I was.
You testified that one of the detectives' gun, there's two detective guns, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
2 minutes.
One of the detective guns took a video of you when you were retrieving that suitcase.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall about how heavy that suitcase was?
It took some effort to pull it up, so it wasn't beyond my ability, but it was heavy enough. It was substantial.
Okay, and have you seen that video since that video was taken?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
Have you seen this jump drive?
Yes.
What's on this jump drive?
If I recall, that is video that Detective Jason Gunn took when we were checking that suitcase, pulling it up and checking it.
Are you depicted in this video?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it an accurate representation of what happened on that day in November 2022?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask that this be state's next exhibit. 137. Detective Oakley, I'm going to show you this video on the screen behind you.
Let me know if you need a hand hold on to it. That looks bad.
Sir, that's you.
Yes, ma'am.
Detective Oakley, does this look like that suitcase?
That is consistent with it.
bulkily. I'm gonna show you some photos. If you'll just flip through them for a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 photos. No, you got this here collected or individual.
If they're stapled, we can do it.
Okay.
It's only 6, so we'll do it.
Okay. You recognize those photos?
Yes, ma'am.
And Detective Oakley, you testified that you in fact opened the suitcase, didn't you?
I did.
To where you could see the entire contents, correct?
That's correct.
And that is when you reached down to feel what was inside of the black packages, the back package.
That's correct.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask that these be the 6 next to the.
Can make it collect these pictures.
Yes, I'll go ahead and say that so we don't lose it. Yes. Hold on, one, two, three. Thank you, ma'am. All right, what's that number, Your Honor?
Oh, number 8.
And to be clear, is this what the scene looked like on that day when Miss Pace's body was found?
Yes.
Okay. The photos that you just
Yes.
looked at. One through 6. All right, I'm going to show you photo, it's been labeled 138-1. She'll turn around. Given what you've already testified to, can you just again explain to the jury where we are standing in this photo?
This is taken from the gravel pull-off area inside of 1600 block. And the drop-off that I described is just beyond that suitcase.
Was this photo taken before you had pulled the suitcase out of there or after?
That photo was taken after the pull-up today.
From the point of view of the camera, would we be close to the pull-off where the vehicles would have been?
Yes, I believe standing in the gravel area or just next to it.
Okay. 138-2. Now, from this point of view, can you explain to the jury where we're at?
To the left of the gray suitcase, the ground drops off towards the river. To the right of the suitcase is the gravel parking area. And that's where those are our crime scene vehicles, which are parked parallel to Sucker Road.
Is this another view similar to 138-1, but this is 138-3, just another view of that suitcase next to the Tennessee River?
That's correct.
138-4, explain to the jury where we're at now. Now you can sort of see more of the road.
That's the gravel pull-off area beside of 1600 South Creek Road, which I described as narrower and getting wider and then tapering back again on the other side of the pull-off. And that's where we parked when we found Jasmine Pace's body.
138-5.
That's the black trash bag that I observed inside the suitcase, and that is the trash bag that I felt with my gloved hand when we were investigating.
And this is how it appeared when you opened the suitcase up.
That's correct.
And 138-6. Is this what you saw when you opened the suitcase?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you describe, you testified to feeling what you believe was a human head.
That's correct.
Can you, based on your memory, which I know this was 2 years ago, can you let the jury know where you felt what you believed was a shoulders or a human head?
Yeah, I remember it very well. The left side of the photo is, that side is closer to the river. The right side is closer to the roadway where we parked our vehicles. And I used my right hand to touch the right side of this trash bag, and that is where I felt the head and the shoulders here, in the bottom right-hand corner, the shoulders and torso.
Would this be the area you're talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. No further questions from this witness, Your Honor.
Investigator Bulkley, my name's Amanda Morrison. I have a few questions for you. When you went to the apartment on Tremont Street of Mr. Chen's, that was November 28th, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Had you had any involvement with the investigation up to or prior to going to the apartment for Mr. Chen?
No, ma'am.
While you were there, did you conduct interviews with various neighbors?
I did.
How many neighbors roughly did you speak with there at Tremont Apartments?
Approximately 5 or 6, I believe.
Were there some individuals that were not home?
Yes, I knocked on other doors and didn't get an answer.
And most of the interviews that you conducted were located to the second floor of this apartment complex, correct?
As I recall, all of the interviews I conducted with neighbors were on the second floor, I believe.
Did you get any information that was?
Objection, Your Honor. May we approach?
May I continue? Investigator Bulkley, on November 28th, the question I had asked was there are some individuals that did not answer when you knocked, correct? Have you conducted any interviews since November 28th with any persons at the Tremont Apartments?
I have not personally, no.
When you got the records from T-Mobile, did you review those?
I immediately sent them to Detective Crawford because it's his case and he is more knowledgeable in that area and using Cellhawk. So I immediately sent them to him.
You were explaining earlier to the state what the contents were of what was received. Did it show call logs?
Yes, there were, there's call data and location data, standard things that would be received with phone records.
And were there text logs?
I don't want to, I don't recall. I know there were records listed consistent with call and text data, but because I did not analyze them at length myself, I cannot say with certainty all of what those records were.
What was the time frame of what you requested from T-Mobile?
I requested a time frame beginning the morning of November 21st of 2022 and ending approximately, I believe it was approximately maybe 17 or 1900 hours on 11/28/22. And the reason that I ended at that time was because I was preparing to go swear the warrant out, and I could only request up to the time that I was swearing that warrant out.
Okay. And at this point in time, at what time did you actually, let me slow down. What time did you actually swear out your search warrant for the mobile records?
The search warrant for Jason Chen's T-Mobile records was sworn out on the evening of the 28th. I would have to double check the time, but sometime certainly after 6 p.m. or 1800, I would have to verify, to give you an exact time.
Were you present with the interview with the Pace family?
No, not that I recall. What interview or what date are you referring to? Because sometimes I may be in the office, I may have passed through. I'm not sure what
So
date you're
on-
referring to.
My question is on November 27th,
Okay.
it's been testified that there has been an interview conducted at CPD. Were you present for that?
No, ma'am, I was not.
Your first involvement is really when the search warrant is executed at Mr. Chen's apartment, correct?
Yes, I
On
responded,
November
yes,
28th.
on Tremont Street. I responded approximately 9:30, I believe,
So,
a.m.
so you get to the apartment that morning, throughout the day you're working on this case, correct? And
Yes.
then the evening you swear out the T-Mobile search warrant.
That's correct.
Now, when did you receive the records back? Did you say December 1?
Yes, ma'am.
What time of day was that?
It was, I believe, 9:09 a.m. It was shortly after 9 o'clock a.m. on December 1st, 22.
And did you immediately make Investigator Crawford aware of those records?
Yes, within a minute,
Okay.
I forwarded them to his email.
So is it fair to say that you had the phone records prior to Ms. Pace's body being recovered on the banks of Suffolk?
I had those phone records in hand prior to, yes, ma'am, I did.
What time did you respond to Suffolk?
It was approximately 1 p.m. or 1300 hours, so sometime after that.
Other than you, the Gunn brothers, Investigator Cottrell, and Investigator King, do you recall anyone else from homicide being present with you?
At the time of locating Ms. Pace's body.
Yes.
Those are the only people I can recall being present when we found the suitcase and her body. Other investigators and civilian employees responded after that point.
Now the Mr. Chen's phone records, is that something separate than what would be received through Cellebrite? What you received from T-Mobile?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, so Cellebrite,
Self-right, yeah.
that is separate from what you've received through T-Mobile, correct?
That's correct. Cellbrite is a program through which we can look at phone downloads. One of the things that Cellbrite does is enables us to view the contents of an actual device, physical device like a cell phone. That had nothing to do with my search warrant. I submitted a search warrant for phone records, electronic data.
Okay, and so that would be something for the benefit of the jury. If what you're requesting is separate than what a forensic download would be, correct?
That's correct.
Were you present for a forensic download of Mr. Chen's phone?
No, ma'am.
Do you know who did the forensic download?
I don't.
Can I have one minute?
Another witness, the one about fingerprints or DNA found on the trash bags or the victim's body. All right, detective, the jury has a couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
If you could listen to the question and answer facing you.
Yes, sir.
And can the jury see the picture of the T-Mobile phone records that identify Jason Chen being near Suck Creek Road? Another witness will testify to that as well. Leaves you one question. When you got out of the riverbank, how long did it take you to find the suitcase?
So we pulled our cars over on the gravel pull-off that you saw pictured, and we got out of our cars, and within 1 minute, literally within 1 minute, but I would estimate even closer to 30 seconds, one of our investigators observed that suitcase and brought it to the rest of our attention.
Can you redirect based on the jury's questions?
No, Your Honor.
Can you recross based on the jury's questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Detective Bolt, you may step down.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached the point where the next witness will take a substantial amount of time. Rather than start and stop, it's 5:35. We're going to take our evening break. So we'll be taken back to the hotel. Again, as always, I must give you the admonition not to talk about the case among yourselves, not let yourself exposed to be exposed to any media. I believe, Lauren, did we get our last case yesterday passed or moved over to another division?
Yes.
So this is the only thing remaining on tomorrow's docket. Can the parties be ready to go at 9 tomorrow?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. We're gonna have you back a little earlier tomorrow, since this is the only thing. So the court also have you back at 8:30, 8:45, and we'll be back in at 9 a.m. to start the trial.